Magandang araw po sa inyong lahat mga ka-review at welcome back dito po sa ating munting channel Pinas News Review, kung saan re-reviewin po natin ang mga mahalagang balita dito sa Pilipinas. Mga simpleng komento sa mga issue dito sa Pinas. Yan mga ka-review natin at ito na nga. Mula kay Viral Pinas, isang senador aalisin. Executive session na nileak sa media. Kaya mga senador nag-init ang ulo. Na sino? Yan mga ka-review natin, tinatanong kung sino po ang senador na ito. Nako po naman na talaga. Yan mga ka-review natin, nasa description po ang full video link ng balitang ito. Mag-subscribe din po kayo kaya Viral Pinas. Yan mga ka-review natin, no? At kung bago ka pa lang at di pa po nakapag-subscribe sa ating munting channel, please don't forget to subscribe at i-click na rin po ang bell notification para updated ka po sa lahat ng ina-upload sa ating reaction video. Yan mga ka-review natin, no? At ito na nga mga ka-review natin, atin pong alamin mula kay Viral Pinas dito po sa kanyang channel itong kung sino kaya itong senador, no, na nag-leak sa media yung kanilang private conversation, no. Dapat hindi na yun inaano sa media, di ba? Kaya nga nila tinatago kasi confidential po yun. Pero ito nga po mga ka-review natin, nagtaka sila kung bakit nalaman agad ng media. Ito na po, panoorin po natin.
Mr. President, yesterday we had an all senators caucus and we discussed lengthily the budget of the Republic of the Philippines. And just before we entered this August chamber, much to my dismay and much to our dismay, there was a news report that identified 8 or 9 senators, and there were names on that list. 8 or 9 senators who wanted to restore the confidential and intelligence fund of the Vice President and the Department of Education. And I wish to tell the people of the Philippines that there was no votation that happened yesterday with regard to the intelligence fund of the Vice President and the Department of Education. In fact, we had an executive session. And I do not know who of our colleagues who scooped or leaked our conversation to this media outlet. I have been a senator here for more than 10 years. And this is the first time that I encountered a scoop or a leakage. I do not know. I do not want to name names. This is a violation of our rules. And the majority floor leader will expound it later. Mr. President, we discussed lengthily for almost 2 hours the schedule, etc., of the budget of the Republic of the Philippines. We never touched or we never voted with regard to all the intelligence fund or confidential fund. In fact, we agreed unanimously to remove all the confidential and intelligence fund, not only that of the Office of the Vice President, including not only that of the Department of Education, but all security or civilian agencies na merong confidential and intelligence fund. Mr. President, nawala. I will just read. Sino mga pangalan? First on the list, Senator Robin Padilla, Christopher Bongo, Ramon Bong Revilla Jr., Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Jingoy Estrada, Lito Lapid, Francis Tolentino, and Cynthia Villar. They are putting us in a bad light, and I condemn this. And I take offense on this. Nakalagay pa, Senator Pia Cayetano is said to be supportive of reinstating Duterte's confidential funds if she can justify the need for them. This is not true. And I hope Senator Pia Cayetano will agree with me. Just for a while, Mr. President, hinahanap pa ni Senator Robin yung mga nakasulat.
So yan mga ka-review natin, no? Patungkol po pala ito sa confidential fund ni Vice President Sara Duterte, no? Ang nakakaano lang nito mga ka-review natin, nakakabahala lang po. Kasi, di ba, executive session po ito, no? Ng mga senador. Tapos, may magli-leak sa media. Di ba? Dapat kasi naka-private na po ito. Confidential po ito mga ka-review natin kasi sila lang po, no, ang pwedeng makaalam nito. Ngayon, masasabi natin na this is for transparency. But, nawawala po yung essence ng pagiging executive session mga ka-review natin. Diba? Like for example, mga ka-review natin, kung, diba? Kung patungkol sa China po ang panag-uusapan natin. Diba? Tapos may mga senador pala dito na nagbibigay ng, nag-feed ng mga information sa media. Hindi po natin alam kung media hawak pa rin po ng Pilipinas, mga ka-review natin, di ba? For example lang ito, kung mangyayari man po ito, no? For example lang natin sa China. Hindi po ito magandang mga ka-review, hindi po ito magandang gawain ng isang senador, di ba? Parang wala siyang tiwala dun sa kanyang mga kasamahan. At bukod dyan mga ka-review natin, parang trinatrahidor niya, di ba? Yung ating bansa sa kanyang ginawa, di ba? Na nagli-leak siya ng mga masaselang impormasyon sa media. Hindi na po pwede yan mga ka-review natin. Dapat malaman siguro na kung sino po ito. Para sa mga susunod na executive session ng Senado, hindi na po ito malaman. Kasi for example na lang po din ulit, no? Di ba yung mga armed forces natin at saka yung Task Force West Philippine Sea nag-executive session din para ka-review. Di ba? Paano kung malaman yan yung plano ng Pilipinas at i-feed sa China, mga ka-review natin? Di ba? Napakadelikado. Napakadelikado po talaga ng senador na ito. Sino kaya itong HÚDÁS na ito, mga ka-review natin, Sino kaya itong ahas na senador na nandyan na nakaupo ngayon sa Senado? Nako, sigurado namang walang aamin dyan, pero pakinggan pa rin po natin.
Department of Education, but all security or civilian agencies na merong confidential and intelligence fund. That the House realigned to agencies focused on the West Philippine Sea. Mr. President, tumayo po ako dito dahil masamang-masama po ang loob ko. I really felt insulted. And I think my other colleagues here also felt the same way, Mr. President. And Mr. President, I stand before you and I want to make this recommendation, maybe to talk to this media outlet or to summon this media outlet and ask them, who among us violated a rule? Who among us leaked what transpired in our executive session yesterday? That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Jinggoy. Before I recognize the other members, may I just like to put on record, I too am very disappointed. I have been a senator for 6 plus 6, 4 plus 6, 10 plus 2, 12 years, and a member of Congress for 9 years. And when we say executive session, we are bound by rules of both the House of Representatives and when I was in the House of Representatives and rules of the Senate when I was elected as a senator. Before I recognize the majority floor leader on the repercussions of violating that rules, I would just like to put on record as well that we had a healthy discussion. There was no voting that took place. There was a healthy discussion on how we will treat this budget, particularly on the confidential and intelligence funds. It's not fair to say that one group was for this and one group was for that because in the end, tama po sinabi ni Senator Estrada, we were unanimous in the committee report that the good gentleman from Aurora will be presenting today. We are in full support of his committee report. Now, I am very alarmed. As a matter of fact, that's why we were late. I usually try to start at 3 p.m. We had a meeting with the leadership, Senator Joel Villanueva and Senator Lauren Legarda. We met because of the implications of leakages during executive session. The executive department and very sensitive agencies of government may no longer divulge information to the executive session if they know somebody might leak it. Before we ask our colleague to react, Senator Estrada, may we ask the majority floor leader, what are the rules, particularly in executive session?
Yes, Mr. President.
So we are all clear.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, first of all, let me state and put into the records that I'm aghast of what happened, Mr. President. Whether this is leak or pure chismis, the fact that it came out, Mr. President, and it appears blow by blow, and unfortunately, Mr. President, the figures, the numbers, even the names that were mentioned were disoriented, Mr. President. I would just like to put into the record of this chamber, Mr. President, what our rules say about executive session. What's this? Rule on section 126 of our rules, Mr. President. Mr. President, section 129 of our rules, Mr. President, it states here, and I quote, any senator who violates the provisions contained in the preceding section may, by a 2/3 vote of all the senators, be expelled from the Senate. And if the violator is an official or employee of the Senate, he shall be dismissed. I'd like to put that on record, Mr. President, because at the end of the day, it's not just the leak or chismis that we're talking about here, and I agree with Senator Jinggoy Estrada being one of our veteran senator here in the Senate, Mr. President. It's more of the sanctity. It's more of the sanctity of the executive session. We continue to perform our duties and responsibilities here in the Senate. During committee hearings of Senator Bato, he would call for executive session. Paano ho tayong pagtitiwalaan ng mga nasa executive? Paano tayong pagtitiwalaan ng taong bayan kung ang ating executive session ay nangyayari po yung mga ganitong pangyayari, Mr. President? And so again, Mr. President, let me
May I add, Majority Floor Leader, Section 28, the preceding section is very important. The President, as well as the senators and officials and employees of the Senate, shall absolutely refrain from divulging any of the confidential matters taken up by the Senate, and all proceedings which might have taken place in the Senate in connection with the said matters shall be likewise considered as strictly confidential until the Senate, by 2/3 vote of all its members, decides to lift the ban of secrecy.
Thank
So
you,
ganun
Mr.
katindi yung
Very
rules
clear.
natin.
Very clear, Mr. President.
So yan mga karibyo natin, yan po yung na-violate na rules ng kung sino mang itong hudas na senador mga karibyo natin, no, sa isang executive session mga karibyo. Nako po. Tama nga po yung sinasabi nila kanina mga karibyo natin na yung sanctity, yung mag-essence no, ng executive session ay mawawala po once na ibinigay mo or nilik mo yung pinag-usapan ninyo sa media or sa sino mga tao, di ba mga karibyo natin. Talagang nakakapanggigil din no, itong senador na ito, kung sino man ito. So mga karibyo natin, narinig din po ninyo na posibleng ma-expel no, or ma-dismiss itong senador na ito kung bobotohan no, ng mga majority boto dyan sa Senado. O pwede palang matanggal po itong hinayutak na hudas na senador na ito mga karibyo natin ha. Abang-abangan po natin kung sino yan. At yung media ha, yung media outlet na binigyan ng impormasyon ay mananagot din mga karibyo natin sapagkat iimbestigahan, no? At tatanungin kung sino nga po itong kanilang naging source mga karibyo natin. Pero baka naman po baka lang naman, eto na naman tayo, baka sabihin na naman po ng media na, di ba, inaalagaan nila, pinoproteksyonan nila yung karapatan ng kanilang source. Nako, dito na naman po tayo magiging hindi naman tayo makakakuha ng impormasyon mga karibyo natin kasi, di ba, pinoprotektahan din ng media yung kanilang source, no, for the safety daw. Yan na yung mga rason for the safety of our source, hindi po namin siya pwedeng pangalanan. Nalagot na. Paano pag national security, mga ka-review natin? For example na lang. It's about national security. Makakapalag pa kaya itong media? Pero kahit na hindi national security, mga ka-review natin, nakakapanggigil din Kaya kailangan dapat malaman po natin itong kung sino po itong senador na ito, mga ka-review natin, para maalis na po ito. Mapalitan ng karapat-dapat, di ba? Nako. May hudas, may ahas, may trahidor na senador sa ating bansa. Ako po, nakakabahala. Yan na. Alright, mga ka-review natin, ano man po ang reaksyon? Kayo po ba ay nanggigigil? Kayo po ba ay nagagalit? Kayo po ba ay, di ba, naiinis dito sa trahidor na senador na ito? Hindi pa natin pwedeng sabihin kasi hindi rin natin alam. No. Well, anyway, mga ka-review natin, kung ano man po ang inyong reaksyon, comment lang po sa baba para at least alam po natin, mga kababayan, ang inyong nararamdaman patungkol po dito sa balitang ito, right? Alright, mga ka-review natin, kung bago pa lang at di ba po nakapag-subscribe sa ating munting channel, please don't forget to subscribe. At i-click na rin po ang bell notification para update ka po sa lahat ng ina-upload sa ating reaction video. Yan, mga ka-review natin, no? Huwag din po kalimutang mag-subscribe kay Viral Pinas. Nasa description po ang full video link ng balitang ito. Panoorin nyo na po sa kanya at sa Senado rin, mga ka-review natin. Meron pong yan. Alright, para malaman po ninyo ng buo. Dito kasi kinat lang natin kasi mapapahaba tayo, mga ka-review natin, no? Maraming salamat po.